Okay, folks, today we're going to be taking a look at Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition. Now, what's going on is we're in this village and people are dying. Werewolves are killing off these people. So we formed this team of inquisitors to try and capture the werewolves and take care of them. Okay, but what we found out is some of the inquisitors are werewolves themselves. Alright, so in this hidden role game, this social deduction hidden role game, what we're going to do is break up into two teams, one being the werewolves, one being the villagers. Okay, now for the villagers, we want to kill off all the werewolves. If we are the werewolves, we want to have more werewolves than our villagers by killing off villagers. Okay, now in today's gameplay, my sister Amanda will be joining us, because again, this is a 3-player game. And without further ado, here we go with Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition. Okay guys, here we go with Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition. Okay, now the first thing we're going to do to set up the game is we're going to get these Inquisitor cards out of the box. Okay, there's two different types. We have werewolves and then we have villagers. Alright, now depending on the player count, we will use a certain amount of these cards. Okay, for a 3-player game, we will use 2 villagers and 1 werewolf. 4-player game, 3 villagers, 1 werewolf. 5-player game, 3 villagers, 2 werewolves. 6-player game, 4 villagers, 2 werewolves. 7-player game, we will use 4 villagers, 3 werewolves. 8 players, 5 villagers, 3 werewolves. 9-player game, we'll use 5 villagers, and 4 werewolves. 10-player game, we'll use 6 villagers and 4 werewolves. 11-player game, 6 villagers, 5 werewolves. And finally, for a 12-player game, we'll use 7 villagers and 5 werewolves. Okay? So what we're going to do is, depending on that number that we just gave you, you're going to take the number of villager and werewolf cards that you need. Okay? Going to give these cards a shuffle, and then you're going to hand one of these to each player. Okay, now the players will take a look at them, keep it secret from everybody else, and see what role they are. Any unused cards, Inquisitioner cards, will be returned to the box. They will not be used for the game. Next we have our resident cards here. Okay, now if we flip these over, there's 2 different teams in the game. There's werewolves and there's villagers. Any resident that is a villager card will have a positive number in the lower right corner of the card. Any villager that is on the werewolf side will have a negative number in the bottom right corner of the card. Okay, so what we want to do here is create our residents. Now, for your first games, the authors, the designers of the games recommend a certain combination of cards you want to use. Okay, we're not going to be doing that because I just basically didn't think of it when we were filming. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our own residents here. And to do that, what we're going to do is add up these positive and negative numbers. We'll need 12 cards total, and we want to try and get as close to 0 as we can. Now, if you play the game a couple times and you find that, the werewolves are winning a little bit more, then, you want to go a little higher on the number scale. Instead of going to 0, go to like 2 or 4 or something. The reverse, if you find the villagers are winning more than the werewolves, go in the negatives a little bit. -2, -3, adding more werewolf cards to the mix. Alright? So, here's what we did. We took 12 cards. Okay, we got them as close to 0 as we could. Once we've done that, we're going to find the corresponding hut cards for the resident card. Okay, so here we got the bodyguard. This is his hut card. Alright, we're going to put these aside for the minute. But we got the residents close to 0 in this case. Okay, we're going to give these cards a shuffle. Okay, and then we're going to lay them out in a grid. We're going to lay them out in a 4x3 grid. Okay, 3 deep, 4 wide. Okay, then we're going to take those hut cards that we put aside for a minute. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put them in a 4x3 grid. Okay, it doesn't matter what order, they're double-sided. Don't have to shuffle them, just place them down in that, 3 deep by 4 wide grid. All remaining hut and resident cards will be returned to the box. They will not be used for the game. Okay, next we have the voting cubes. Okay, we're going to make a pile of these, which will be the supply. Out of this pile, we're going to give each player 2 voting cubes to start off with, and then the final step for setup is to randomly choose their first player. Give them the Inquisitor, the Grand Inquisitor token here. Okay, and you are now ready to play Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition. A terrible thing is happening in our village. Werewolves are killing off our villagers one by one. Unable to determine who amongst us are werewolves and who aren't, we have created a team of Inquisitors to help sort out the mess before it's too late. That's where you and your team come in. No strangers to werewolf infestations. You know that the best thing to do is to start lynching suspects. No sooner do you get started on this project when you realize there's a problem. The werewolves has infiltrated our team of Inquisitors. Now we're in serious trouble. We need to figure out how to save the village while thwarting the werewolves working against us. Okay, so in Werewolf Inquisition, there's 2 teams. One team will be the villagers who are trying to save the people in our village. Okay, and the villagers will win when all the werewolves are dead. On the other hand, there's a team of werewolves in the village trying to kill off the villagers one by one. Okay, now they will win if there are more werewolves in the village than residents at any time during the game. Now to do this, the game is broken up into 2 phases. We have the day phase and the night phase. During the day phase, players will select one of these hut cards and use their power. Okay, and that could be anything from placing cubes on one of these villagers. It could be seeing which one of these villagers are, what their role is. Okay, it could be anything along that lines. Then at the end of the day phase, everybody will take one of their vote cubes if they haven't, place it on a villager card. Whoever has the most cubes on them will be lynched. Okay, that's how the villagers are trying to catch the werewolves. The werewolves, on the other hand, are trying to survive. Okay, what they will do is, at the night phase, the Grand Inquisitor will select one of these columns of villagers. Okay, they will go from the bottom to the top, take that column rather, pass it around the table, and only the werewolves can shuffle these cards or rearrange them. And then they will place them back down from the top to the bottom. The bottom card will be killed off. The werewolves ate that villager that night. Now for a 5 or more player game, we're going to do what's called the first night. Okay, during this step, everybody, including the Grand Inquisitor, will close their eyes. Okay, the Grand Inquisitor will then tell the werewolves to open their eyes so they can identify the other werewolves on their team. Okay, then the werewolves will close their eyes, and then the Grand Inquisitor will tell everybody to open their eyes, and the game will begin. The game's broken up into 2 phases. We have the day phase and the night phase. During the day phase, starting with the Grand Inquisitor, players will select one of these hut cards. Okay, they will take them and put them in their play area. What we usually do is just turn them sideways, but you can do this however you want. Once a player has done that, they have 2 options. They can either do what is written on these hut cards, okay, or they can take 2 of these voting cubes and put them in their play area. Okay. Now, this player here selected the seer, which means that they can view one of these residence cards. Okay, so what they would do is they would look at one of their cards they're choosing and then place it down horizontally, showing that that card has been seen. Okay, and then it'll go to the next player, and they'll do the same thing. They'll either choose to do what's written on the card or select 2 of these voting cubes. So, let's say the next player chooses to be a villager. Okay, they'll do the power of the card, which says takes 2, and place 1 on a resident card. Then the next player, I don't know, let's say they are going to be the apprentice seer. Where is she? Okay. She will pay a cube to the supply and then she can look at one of these vertical cards and see what it is. Okay, and again, place it horizontally. Then, starting with the Grand Inquisitor, players will select one of their voting cubes and place it on a resident card. Now, players have to vote if they have any voting cubes on in their play area. Okay, if they do not have any voting cubes in their play area, they simply cannot vote. Okay, so again, like I said, starting with the Grand Inquisitor, which I screwed up there. Okay, they'll select one of these residents and they'll vote. If there's a tie like there is here, okay, the Grand Inquisitor will break the tie. They will select which resident to be lynched. Okay, so let's say we're going to kill off this guy here. Okay, we have the Hunter. So the Hunter card, the resident card, and the Hut card will be removed from the game, okay? The cube that was on them will be replaced to the supply. Okay, now if at any point during the game one column has one or less cards in it, you would simply move the cards so that you have a full column without changing the orientation of the card. Okay, now we'll move into the night phase. Now, during the night phase, the Grand Inquisitor will choose one of these columns of villagers, residents, that they want to gather up. And this is an opportunity for the werewolves to kill off one of the villagers. Now, what they'll do is they will gather these cards up, alright, returning any cubes that are on them to the supply. Okay, and they will gather them up in a specific order. We usually do it from the bottom to the top. You can do it however you want to. Just remember that these will have to go back in that same order. Okay, so then the Grand Inquisitor will gather up one of these columns. He will tell all the players to close their eyes, and he will pass the cards to the player to his left. Players can open their eyes to pass and receive cards, but they must immediately close their eyes after they have passed and received the cards. Okay, now if you are a villager, you're going to simply pass the cards. Cannot look at them, cannot rearrange them, can't do anything like that. If you are the werewolves, you can look at the cards and choose the orientation of them, you know, which one's going to go where. Okay, and then you would pass it to the player to your left. Okay, now you'll see in the video we rub the two cards together, try and make noise so it's not obvious that you're the werewolf looking at the cards and rearranging them and all that. Now once this is done, it goes around the table back to the Grand Inquisitioner here. The cards will be placed back on the table in the order that they were picked up. Okay, and the bottom card in that column will be revealed. Okay, now if it's a villager or a werewolf, the resident card, along with their corresponding hut card, will be removed from the game. If it were a werewolf that were killed off here, then the cards would be picked up and shuffled and then placed back in their spots. Okay? And then again, if at any point in time one column only has one card, you would combine the columns to make a full column there. Okay, keeping the orientation of the cards. Now the last thing we're going to do during the night phase is we're going to return all the hut cards back to the center of the table, or turn them in this case like we play. Okay, and we tend to shift them around a little bit, make them a little neater. Alright, and then the Grand Inquisitor token will be passed to the player on their left. And you will start a new round. Now this will continue until there are either more werewolves than villagers at any time during the game, in which case the werewolves win, or all the werewolves have been killed off, in which case the villagers win. Okay, now before we get going on to the gameplay, let's get into detail on some of these resident hut cards. First we have the villagers. Okay, now what their hut card will allow you to do is take two cards from the supply, place one in your play area, and then place one on one of the resident cards. Now the werewolves share the same hut card as the villagers. So again, take two from the supply, put one in your play area, place the other one out on one of the residents. Okay, next we have the apprentice seer here. What she allows you to do is you have to pay for her, pay one vote cube, place it back to the supply, and then you can view one of the residents cards here. Okay, you would simply take a look at it, then place it face down horizontally, showing that that card was viewed. Okay, next we have the bodyguard. What the bodyguard allows you to do is remove any vote cubes on a resident card, if there is any on there, and then you will be able to place the bodyguard hut card on that resident. And that will protect that resident from getting any more vote cubes during the day phase. Okay, now the bodyguard hut card must be removed from that card before the Grand Inquisitor selects a column, during the night phase. Okay, now we have the cursed card. Okay, now the cursed hut action will allow you to take 4 vote cubes from the supply. Okay, and place them in your play area. Now, if the hut's action was used by a player during the day and the werewolves attack that card at night, the cursed card becomes a werewolf. That column's card, including the cursed card, are shuffled and placed back into that column. It is now treated like a werewolf from that point on. Okay, next we have the minion here. Okay, what the minion allows you to do is take 2 votes from the supply and then place it on any resident card that already has at least 1 vote on it. Okay, next we have the mason here. Now with the mason, what you can do is you could pay 2 voting cubes to the supply, and then you can look at any other player's Inquisitor card. Okay, keeping that to yourself. Well, not revealing it to anybody, but you could tell the other players whatever you want to. Whether, you could tell them that it's a werewolf, you could tell them that they're a villager, depending on what team you are on. Could be an advantage to you. Alright, now, it is not recommended for this card to be used in a game with fewer than 5 players. Okay, next we have the hunter. With the hunter, you can take 3 voting cubes from the supply, and you can place them on any resident card that you wish to. Okay, next we have the mayor. Now, the mayor will be able to take the Grand Inquisitor token and give it to any player they wish to, including themselves. Okay, that player will start voting that round and break ties, naturally. And then they will be able to choose which column to gather up and pass around the table. Okay, and then as usual, at the end of the round, it'll be passed to the player to their left. Okay, next we have the sorcerer. Now, what the sorcerer can do is take any card that a seer has viewed earlier, okay, one that's horizontal. You can take a look at it and then place it back where it was horizontally. Okay, and then they must take 2 voting cubes and place it on that resident. Alright, next we have the prince here. What he simply does is take 4 voting cubes from the supply, places in his play area. Next we have the troublemaker here. Now what the troublemaker will do is pay 1 vote cube to the supply, okay, and then they will take 1 column, and if there are any vote cubes on that column, they will remove them and place them to the side. And then what they will be able to do is take that column, give those cards a shuffle, okay, and then place them back, okay, and then they will take the cubes from that column and place them back on the cards that correspond with that spot. Okay, the seer here can simply look at the card and place it sideways. Went over that a little bit during the rules overview. Now the witch here will take all voting cubes from one resident and place them on another resident. Okay, now the wolf cub will allow you to take 3 voting cubes from the supply, okay, and then if the wolf cub resident is lynched on the same day that the hut is used, that same night the werewolves get to kill 2 residents. Okay, so the Grand Inquisitor will take a column during the night phase, like he normally does. The cards will get passed around the table, and then the bottom card will be killed. Okay, and then the Grand Inquisitor will select another column and do the same thing. Okay, now the wolf cub does not count as a werewolf, so you cannot win the game with a wolf cub if you are the werewolves. So now you're ready to play Ultimate Werewolf Inquisition.